At the very center of Europe, surrounded by France, Germany, Austria, and Italy, sits a confederation of 26 democratic states known as Switzerland. The states are called cantons, and the most southerly is Ticino. Just north of the Italian border, it is one of the most beautiful parts of Europe. Snow-capped alpine peaks ease down into mountains covered with thick forests of laurel and chestnut trees. Thousands of waterfalls flow into lakes that twist their way through the mountains, mountains that are the key to Ticino's history. Ticino is the only Swiss canton that is located entirely on the southern side of the Alps, and through much of the year, it has a mild and sunny climate. It's one of the cantons in Switzerland where the official language is Italian. And right there is Ticino's most fascinating aspect, a blend of the warmth of Italy with the efficiency of Switzerland. Passionate people, and their phones work. The capital city of Ticino is Bellinzona. It's been inhabited since prehistoric times, and with good reason. Let's say you were looking for a nice place to live during the Neolithic period, about 7,000 years ago. You'd want a spot on a high hill so you could get a good look at any conquering hordes that might be coming into the neighborhood. You'd also want your hill to have a dependable source of fresh water, just in case you were stuck up there during a long battle. And if you could get the landlord to paint every 2 years, you were golden. A citadel with a deep well, that's what you were looking for, and that's precisely what you have in Bellinzona's Castel Grande. The ancient Romans started building the present structure because they wanted to control this valley. It was the most important gateway on the trade route between Italy and the rest of Europe. To be the ruling power in this valley was worth a fortune, and during the 1200s, the two great families of Milano, the Visconti and the Sforzas, constantly battled for control. The Dukes of Milano took what the Romans started and built it into a chain of 3 fortresses that extend across the valley floor. The highest is Castello di Sasso Corbaro. Midway up is Castello Montebello. The lowest fortress is Castel Grande. All 3 are connected by a wall. Not a great wall, but not bad. And all 3 are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. In the end, however, the castles were unable to stand up to repeated sieges, and by the early 1500s had been conquered by the Swiss Confederation, which at the time was made up of the 3 original states of Uri, Svizza, and Unterwalden, and each of those states took one of the castles for themselves. The highest castle is also the home of an excellent restaurant, which is only fitting since the castle once belonged to both the Visconti and Sforza families of Milano. The Viscontis and the Sforzas were serious eaters and kept written copies of their family recipes. A guy from Ticino named Martino di Rossi collected those recipes and used them to publish the most important cookbook of the 1400s. He got rid of the heavy oriental spices that were being used and replaced them with local herbs. He also set up the idea of a pasta course. The man was a genius. And Athos Luzi, the owner and chef of the castle restaurant, has a genius for the traditional dishes of the region.
So we have a risotto with mushrooms and chanterelle.
Ooh, yummy.
Enjoy it.
Thank you. Below the castle, Bellinzona looks very much as it did during the Renaissance. On Saturday mornings, there's an open-air market. And if you're lucky, you will have hit town on one of those days when Ticino's answer to the mamas and the papas is giving one of their informal concerts.
E viva l'amore, l'amore, l'amor che viene che va, e viva l'amore, l'amore, l'amor che viene che va, e viva l'amore, l'amore, l'amor che viene che va, e viva l'amore, chi lo sa fare. Non la nego.
By the middle of the 15th century, the Swiss dominated the northern part of Ticino, but the Dukes of Milano still held the town of Bellinzona. The Milanese felt threatened by the growing influence of the Swiss and decided it was time to fight. On December 28, 1478, their soldiers marched into the small town of Giornica, just up the valley from Bellinzona. On a hill high above Guernica, 200 Swiss troops and 400 local partisans watched the Milanese arrive, and then without the slightest warning, sent down hundreds of huge boulders that crashed into their encampment. The Milanese were crushed and at the same time defeated. The encounter became known as the Battle of the Stones. It was the first major success for the Swiss and eventually led to their control of the entire Ticino. A stone's throw from the center of Giornica is San Nicola. Built during the early 1100s, it is the best preserved Romanesque church in Ticino. My guide was Marina Guzman-Metzger, and she started by explaining the unusual sculptures that are at the front of the building.
These animals here, the statues that we see outside, are really strange, if you want, because this is not a situation that you would find in nature. First of all, we have two lions that protect the church. We have here a rabbit, and there a lamb that are looking at the guests arriving. And moreover, you have very near the lions two lying rabbits that are not scared.
Rabbits are just sitting next to the lions.
Exactly, they are just sitting there and not being scared of the lions. So this is not normal, but this means probably that this is a safe place to anybody. And here we have frescoes coming from the 1478, very beautiful but amazing, especially is the center of them. Look at the three heads that have been designed there, representing the Trinity. One is the Father, the second the Son, and the other the Holy Ghost. If you look at them, you will see that they have only two pairs of eyes. Incredible, but this is a symbol. It's the technique of the pagan to show the bond of mysticism. And this is also a fresco that you will never see again, as they have been all destroyed after the Council of Trento, as declared, in fact, not acceptable by Catholicism.
Too mystical.
It's too mystical, exactly. It's something that represents the encountering between the paganism and the Catholicism.
The force field in the church of San Nicola may be hidden, but the energy of the town of Lucerne is right up front. Lucerne has been a resort since the time of the ancient Romans. Historians tell me that if you had been gladiating day after day during the busy season, or marching along with the Roman legions and needed a break, Lucerne was the perfect spot. These days, the thing to do is sit at one of the cafes that face out on Lake Maggiore, have an espresso, and then take a ride on the Cento Valley Railroad. If you purchase a Swiss pass in the United States, you can use it on the Cento Valley trains, which run through the day, and take you from town to town in one of Ticino's most beautiful valleys. Dirk Mayer is the director of the company.
This is the train we are taking. You see, we have low-floor entrance, which is very comfortable for elderly people. We go from Locarno to Domodossola. That is from Switzerland to Italy. With this train you can discover nice little villages with a lot of art in their churches. Every village has its own character. The train takes you to many places. For example, in this place, Pontebrolla, we have a rock climbing school up on these steep slopes. And in Intragna, we got the tall railway bridge, 75 meters over ground. And there we installed bungee jump center and outdoor center. In the meantime, we do as well in this location free climbing at the end of the bridge.
At one point, we got off the train and took a cable car to Raza.
This village Raza was built in 700. It is on 900-meter altitude, and you can arrive only by cable car and or 2.5 hours by foot walking. people of this village before 1700, they were working almost over the whole year as tallymen, unloading ships in Livorno, and be custom officers. With this activity, they earned so much money that they decided to give up their village, and they built in between 1680 and 1720, they built up this village you see here, and it was urbanistically planned and built, and which is very seldom for that time so far away. And you see the people must have been very wealthy because the houses look very nice and they're very big, and they are not attached one to the other, but they have space in between themselves.
A sign in the center of town directs you to a series of footpaths. But instead of giving you the distance, they give you an estimate of the time it will take you to get there based on a speed of 2 miles per hour. Just across the river from Lucerne and tucked into a sunny bay is the town of Ascona. Its history as an artistic and cultural community goes back to the time of the Renaissance. During the early 1900s, a hill above the town, known as Monte Verita, became home base for a society interested in alternative lifestyles. The place attracted philosophers, artists, writers, nudists, anarchists, and vegetarians. It's kind of like Woodstock, only everybody stayed. The Locarno and Ascona area is also the perfect place to begin a visit to the valley of Versasca. Versasca is a deep, narrow gorge being cut even deeper by rushing streams of emerald green water. And the way to get there is by post bus, which in Switzerland is an extremely efficient form of transportation. In 1849, Switzerland established a national postal service carrying mail by horse, carriage, and sleigh. It was a cross between Santa Claus and the Pony Express. In 1906, they extended their service to include passengers. These yellow buses are a familiar sight all over the nation, and they haven't changed their look since 1921, when the first bus started navigating through Switzerland's mountain passes. One of the villages we passed through was Coripo. Welcome to the 1500s. Small granite stone buildings and a 400-year-old church hang from the canyon walls. Every stone is protected by the government as a national treasure. My first stop was a small bridge built by the ancient Romans that's still standing. Over 2,000 years old, in perfect shape, and it's never had a toll booth. The valley is a popular hangout for swimming, hiking, and biking. The buses run every hour, so you can hike for a while and then pick up another bus when you're tired. The rural roadsides of Ticino are peppered with small open chapels that are dedicated to minor saints or local folk heroes who hope to be sainted. Like Lorenzo del Lago, who was venerated for his abstinence. He never ordered dessert, though it was usually included in the price of his meals. While I was in Ticino, I stayed at the Villa Principe Leopoldo, a 5-star hotel and member of the Relais and Chateau group. It's named after Prince Frederick Leopoldo, a descendant of one of the great families that ruled the German Empire when it was first formed in 1871. The house was built in the late 1800s as a summer residence for Prince Leopoldo's father, and the prince lived here until he died in 1931. The villa remained a private home for European aristocracy until 1986, when it was turned into a hotel. Fortunately, the villa has lost none of its royal charm. The villa is located on top of a hill with a fantastic view of Lake Lugano, the nearby mountains, and the Alps, a view which you can take from poolside. Under the direction of General Manager Maurice Jurek, who was named European Hotel Manager of the Year, it's become one of the most respected properties in Europe. The executive chef is Dario Ranza. The kitchen specializes in traditional Mediterranean recipes like octopus salad with potatoes and steamed sea bass with tomato and parsley oil. The wines come from the villa's excellent and extensive cellar. In the evening, the Collina d'Oro bar has live music and serves its signature drink, which is Campari and ice, shaken, not stirred, and quickly poured into a martini glass. The villa has 37 spacious and elegant rooms with private terraces overlooking Lake Lugano. Across the street is a building known as the Residence. 41 more rooms with restful views of the garden and the park, and a second pool. The city of Lugano was built on the edge of a bay facing two mountains that rise out of a lake. The warmth of the sun and the restful beauty of the surrounding Alps have made it a health resort and tourist attraction for hundreds of years. People call it the Rio of the Old World. The best time to walk Lugano is first thing in the morning. Start along the lakefront promenade and watch the sunrise over the mountains. Then turn into the old city, a pedestrian area with many small shops. At the end of the street is the Church of Santa Maria, a former Franciscan monastery. It was built on the lakefront in 1499. Inside is the most famous Renaissance fresco in Switzerland, a majestic and expressive presentation of the Passion of Christ. Just down the block is the Piazza della Riforma. The piazza is a large square lined with cafes, and on one side, the town hall, which was built on a slightly shifting foundation. And like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it leans a little more each year. And like most political institutions, depending on where you stand, it leans a little bit to the right, and at the same time, a little bit to the left. And while you're in the neighborhood, stop into Gabbani. In 1937, Domenico and Juliet Gabbani opened a small delicatessen and butcher shop. In the 70s, their son Lino took over the business and started adding additional shops. Today, there's 6 stores. Gabbani is a good place to taste Ticino. Through most of their history, the Ticinesi were mountain people, and their cooking resembles that of the Piedmont in Italy. Across the street is a shop with the cheeses of Ticino. They're often named after the villages in which they are made. They're served with a pinch of salt, a twist of pepper, and a drizzle of olive oil. At the edge of the old town is a dock where boats leave for the little villages that line the shores of Lake Lugano. They navigate through a landscape that really looks like it came off a postcard. Get off at Gandria, a fishing village with a history that goes back to the ancient Romans. The small houses that line the narrow streets date from the Middle Ages. A head count in 1590 indicated that 330 people lived in Gandria. A census in 2001 turned up only 215 people. An ominous trend. If it keeps up, in 900 years, Gandria will be empty. Get here as soon as you can. I came here to eat at a restaurant called Locanda Gandriesi. It's in a house that was built during the 1500s as an inn. There's a small bar, 6 tables inside, and 5 tables on the balcony that hangs out over the lake. Most of the town's fishermen have left for better paying jobs in the cities, but fortunately the fish stayed behind. The catch of the day was a fillet of salmon trout with boiled potatoes and seasonal vegetables. They also make just about every local specialty you could imagine. They make veal shanks with polenta, rabbit with polenta, mushrooms with polenta, sausages with polenta, and as a special, but you have to order a day in advance, polenta with polenta. The peaceful sail back to Lugano takes only 30 minutes. Upon returning to Lugano, there was one more thing I wanted to do, and that was take a ride up to the top of Monte San Salvatore. The cable car leaves every 15 minutes, and the trip to the top takes only 12. Monte San Salvatore runs up 2,992 feet from its base. At the top, there is a 360-degree view of the Alps, Lake Lugano, and the Lombardic Plain in Italy. As I pointed out earlier, Switzerland has 4 official languages: Swiss German, French, Italian, and Romansh. And many people have a working knowledge of English. Translating from one language to another is a daily part of Swiss life. To make things easier in Switzerland and around the rest of the world, a company in Ticino called Simultanphone is developing a real-time translation service. You pick up your phone, call them up, tell them what language you want to work in, who you want to talk to. They make the call for you, and they stay on the line doing the translation. They're also working on a face-to-face system. You take your cell phone, plug this contraption into it, call Simultanphone, tell them the language you want, put this speaker and earphone into your ear, and give this end, which is a speaker and an earphone, to the person you want to talk to. They stay on the line and do the translation. It's going to change my life. I hope you've enjoyed this visit to Switzerland, and I hope you will join us next time for Travels and Traditions. I'm BURT WOLF.
You can watch this program and link to hundreds of other BURT WOLF programs free at burtwolf.com. There's information on how to tour the same places, plus Burt's slightly irreverent take on history and culture. It's all at burtwolf.com.
7,000 years ago. You'd want a spot on a high hill so you could get a good look at any conquering hordes that might be coming into the neighborhood. You'd also want your hill to have a dependable source of fresh water, just in case you were stuck up there during a long battle. And if you could get the landlord to paint every 2 years, you were golden. A citadel with a deep well, that's what you were looking for, and that's precisely what you have in Bellinzona's Castel Grande. The ancient Romans started building the present structure because they wanted to control this valley. It was the most important gateway on the trade route between Italy and the rest of Europe. To be the ruling power in this valley was worth a fortune, and during the 1200s, the 2 great families of Milano, the Visconti and the Sforzas, constantly battled for control. The Dukes of Milano took what the Romans started and built it into a chain of 3 fortresses that extend across the valley floor. The highest is Castello di Sasso Corbaro. Midway up is Castello Montebello. The lowest fortress is Castel Grande. All 3 are connected by a wall. Not a great wall, but not bad. And all 3 are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. In the end, however, the castles were unable to stand up to repeated sieges, and by the early 1500s had been conquered by that are the key to Ticino's history. Ticino is the only Swiss canton that is located entirely on the southern side of the Alps, and through much of the year it has a mild and sunny climate. It's one of the cantons in Switzerland where the official language is Italian. And right there is Ticino's most fascinating aspect, a blend of the warmth of Italy with the efficiency of Switzerland. Passionate people, and their phones work. The capital city of Ticino is Bellinzona. It's been inhabited since prehistoric times, and with good reason. Let's say you were looking for a nice place to live during the Neolithic period. That's by the Swiss Confederation, which at the time was made up of the 3 original states of Uri, Svizza, and Unterwalden, and each of those states took one of the castles for themselves. The highest castle is also the home of an excellent restaurant, which is only fitting since the castle once belonged to both the Visconti and Sforza families of Milano. The Viscontis and the Sforzas were serious eaters and kept written copies of their family recipes. A guy from Ticino named Martino di Rossi collected those recipes and used them to publish the most important cookbook of the 1400s. He got rid of the heavy oriental spices that were being used and replaced them with local herbs. At the very center of Europe Surrounded by France, Germany, Austria, and Italy, sits a confederation of 26 democratic states known as Switzerland. The states are called cantons, and the most southerly is Ticino. Just north of the Italian border, it is one of the most beautiful parts of Europe. Snow-capped alpine peaks ease down into mountains covered with thick forests of laurel and chestnut trees. Thousands of waterfalls flow into lakes that twist their way through the mountains. Mountains